Well, hello there. I'm Alice Oliver, and you are listening to Just Films and That. This is the podcast where we celebrate films we reckon might be underrated or underseen. And it was Josh's turn to pick the film this week, and he went with A Knight's Tale from 2001. So let's see what we reckon. So then, Josh, you picked this week's film, A Knight's Tale, from 2001, listeners. So spoiler warning for that if you haven't seen it yet. So, Josh, go on, tell us. What is the film about and why did you pick it?
Heath Ledger, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh.
He's a knight.
Mm.
And he goes
He's got
on
a tail.
No,
he hasn't got a tail.
So Heath Ledger, he plays like a knight squire, and the knight suddenly dies, as the film opens with, and he decides to take on the identity of a knight because he feels, why shouldn't he get a little bit of that glory and fame for himself? And then as the film goes on, it's just your classic rags to riches, goes on a quest, wins the competitions. It's a jousting film. He falls in love, he meets a girl, and a good time, I think, is had by all.
Zero to hero, just like that.
No, that was another episode we did about 18 months ago. Remember that?
Back in the day.
So, why did I pick this one? Well, obviously, it's that weird time now between Christmas and New Year. Where you don't know what day it is and you're just watching films and eating chocolate and all that sort of stuff. And last year I picked Mouse Hunt because I thought it was a good film for that period. And I thought,
that was honestly one of the best decisions you've
really,
made. That was such a good call. Yeah, for that time of year as well. It was absolutely perfect. I think as far as timed film choices go, that was perfect.
Mouse Hunt for the post-Christmas pre-New Year period.
Perfect. Brilliant.
So I thought, based on that, why not try and find another film that suits that period where it's got a little bit of something for all the family. It's a decent blockbuster with a little bit of something about it, but you can enjoy it in that period where it's cold outside and you just want to eat chocolate and eat cheese and all that and just watch films. So that's why I picked this one. But then I looked at the scores. I saw the scores and I thought, bloody hell, I think it's a little bit underrated. I don't think it's underseen. It's pretty widely seen. Although I'm not sure how many people are watching it now, because obviously it's over 20 years old. But I think at the time, I think it was pretty successful at the box office. So I'm saying it's underrated, and I'm saying it's time of year appropriate, which is pretty much why I've picked it. So,
all right.
Had you seen this one before? Because I don't think you had, because I think you let slip that you hadn't.
So, as is unfortunately the case with me and quite a few films, I couldn't really remember, but I think I did start watching it, but then I may have been a little bit drunk when I started watching it, and I don't think I made it to the end, and I really didn't remember much about it. So I went into it thinking, no, I haven't seen this, and I'm watching it with totally fresh eyes.
Okay, so let's say, so you hadn't seen it before. Don't worry, listeners, falling asleep drunk in front of a film is standard.
I'm getting better, I promise. I don't do it as much anymore, I promise.
We've all done it, especially just after Christmas times. The films I've never finished, bloody Anyway, so you hadn't seen it before, not that you remember anyway. What did you think about it? I'm dying to know what you think about it, but I'm also a little bit nervous.
Why? What do you think? What do you think I think about it, Josh?
Because I think there's got to be stuff in here that everyone likes. I don't think it's not rubbish. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But I can also see how you might. There's definitely some stuff, and I've got it in my dislike section. That's like, there are certain things in it, and I think you probably think the same things I think in terms of what you didn't like. But I reckon you probably liked it overall because you like your swords and your shields.
Oh,
you like your Lord of the Rings stuff.
I do love me a bit of Lord of the Rings.
You nerd.
I love it. It's the best.
And you like mead. There's a lot of mead in this film.
I love mead.
But I reckon there's stuff you liked about it, but I reckon you went crazy about it.
So, I mean, in general, I had a great time watching this film.
Yes!
It's a lot of fun, isn't it?
It is so much fun, isn't it?
It's not only fun, it is a lot funnier than I expected. The music is great, the cast is fabulous, the mise en scène is fabulous, and it is just a good time, really, from start to finish. So mostly positive feelings here.
We'll
get to the bottle a little later. So what what did you like about it? Like watching it this time around, like what did you notice? What are the things you liked about
So
it?
overall, because actually when I was watching it, I found a lot more that I liked about it in terms of the specificities of it and things that I didn't expect to dislike about it.
Okay, yeah,
So
brilliant.
starting with the likes,
Yeah.
overall, I think that the real strength in this film is in the concept and the
Mhm.
execution, and that is
Yes.
down to the script, the
Mhm.
direction. I love the overall concept and the education of it. You know,
Yep.
sorry, the execution of it. You know, it's that idea of it's a medieval rags to riches sports film with a
Mhm.
modern feeling to it, which is what I
Mhm.
really like about it. So let's talk about the script and the concept. So it's set in medieval times, but you have like a modern soundtrack. So you have like
Yep.
Queen in it and other songs,
Yep.
modern elements as well. So what they do is they take jousting as a sport, which it was a sport, but they present it to you as like watching like a modern day baseball game or a modern day
Yep.
football game with like people
Yep.
walking around with big tankards of beer and snacks for the crowd, and the fans are always chanting, and you've got like hype men judging the crowd up and all that. And I thought that little modern twist on it, I thought gave it like a real unique idea. And I think in a time, and we talked about this before, where a lot of things in the cinema now are great but aren't necessarily original ideas, I think this idea of a medieval sports film, I think it's such a great idea, and I think it's something that I think you can really get into. It's
I
a lot of
think
fun.
as well, I think
No,
as well
sorry, go
by
on.
doing it like that, it injects a lot of energy into
Yeah,
it.
it's really
Whereas
upbeat, isn't it?
yeah, definitely. And I think doing something like this and sort of around this subject matter and around that concept, it could have been not boring. I don't want to say boring, but I suppose just a little bit flat, because it's like, well, what do you use to excite the audience in
Yeah.
that instance? Like, because it's not fantasy. So we haven't got dragons flying around. We haven't got like demons and monsters and stuff.
Yeah.
So then it's like, so how do you make this exciting? And they
Yeah.
do it by opening with "We Will Rock You" by Queen.
Yeah, and that's it. Isn't it?
Perfect.
It's like you've got the crowd, and obviously it's showing the jousting, and you've got the
Yeah,
and
so
it's just
good.
proper atmospheric. And I think there's a lot in this for everyone. I think it's a PG, isn't it? So it's not. There's nothing really in it that I don't think you'd be happy with your kids watching. Maybe sort of 8 and above. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I
I think
reckon so, yeah.
there's a lot in this, and I think I remember watching this because when it came out, I'd have been 12 or something like that when I first watched it. So I liked it then, and I like it now, right? And that's 20. It's 21 years old now, or 22 years old, however old it is. So it's really fun. Like you say, it's got lots of energy in there because of that concept. So the two feed each other, because you get the tension building in the jousting, but then the fun feel of everyone watching it. And it feels really cinematic in that sense, with the way that it's shot almost like as a sports film, isn't it? Like it's a medieval film, but it's shot as a sports film.
Yep.
Great script, right? So the dialogue, I think, really balances that idea of authenticity in, like, they give the characters dialogue which sort of sounds like it's all area appropriate. Now, obviously, we don't know that much about how people spoke in this time. We base it on diaries and stuff like that, but that's what people who could read and write sounded like. Whereas we don't know what the common man might have sounded like. You know, we can take our best guess, but we don't know. So that idea that they do stuff in this, like they invent phrases, or as far as I know, they invent phrases. Like one of the characters is always going, "I'll fong you." And it means like I'll hit you, but obviously, but it feels to me like it adds a bit of life into the film. It adds a bit of life into the characters and stuff, and I really like that. Or some of the more serious dialogue, it feels like they'll say, instead of like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. Like instead of saying "I haven't," they'll be like "Have I not?" You know, that sort of thing. And I think that really
quite
that brings
poetic
it,
still. Yeah,
quite
even
poetic.
though,
So because it's based on A Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer.
Oh,
Now,
is it
Yeah.
really? Wow,
So
that's
Geoffrey
interesting.
Chaucer is a character in this film.
Indeed, he is played by
he's
Paul
played Paul
Bettany.
Bettany, who is
Cool.
brilliant
Oh
in
my God,
this.
he's so good.
He does this. He does that because he becomes the hype man. And he does a lot of like judging the crowd up, which I guess I think you've got something to say about. So I'm going to let you talk about that in a minute. But so it's not based on. I don't think it's based on Canterbury Tales. I think there is a bit of Canterbury Tales called A Knight's Tale, and they've sort of taken it and ran with it, and then they've put in they've interwoven the story with real people. So Geoffrey Chaucer's in it. Edward the Black Prince, who was a real royal, is in it as well. And then there's other people who sort of feel like they were. You know, the villain feels like he probably was a real general at the time. I don't know if he was. I don't think he was, or anything like that. So it really feels like they get a real good balance of it feeling era appropriate. But anyway, I've waffled a little bit, and I have got more to say. But I want to know what did you like about it?
So I love how you are just launched into it. You are just
Yeah.
launched into the
Bang,
story.
starts, doesn't it?
It starts. There is no waiting around. There's no long drawn out exposition-y like monologues, no prolonged character introductions. It just gets going with "We Will Rock You" to start you off. And I do like the use of modern songs in historic setting. It is just cool as hell, right? So like you've already touched on, the script is pretty good and it is brought to life well by some really good performances. Not everyone was great, but there were enough good performances in there to keep you
Paul
engaged.
Bettany
So
in
Paul
this, man.
Bettany, let's talk about Paul,
Oh,
right?
Paul.
So he is the standout for me in this. Like he not only does he completely understand the assignment as the actor,
yeah.
but his character Chaucer completely understands the assignment as well. He's like, "Oh, you want me to be a hype man? Well, I'm going to be the best damn hype man you have ever seen," and he just absolutely delivers. So, do you remember when we did Drop Dead Fred, and you asked, "Oh, who could play Fred in a remake?" And I eventually said Paul Bettany would be a good choice. And then this has just reinforced that.
Oh yeah, I
completely.
think I never thought of it like that. Yeah, I mean, Paul Bettany is a fine actor. You know, he's done a bit of everything. You know, he's great in this. He's great in things like A Beautiful Mind and the Marvel films and stuff like that.
Him as Vision he's literally possibly the best performance in all those films.
Do you think? Do you like that much?
I just thought he was brilliant. And for me, WandaVision, I may have said this already, but WandaVision is what actually got me into Marvel.
Yeah, yes, of course. Yeah, you've said that before. Yeah.
I was such a passive Marvel film. Like, I just wasn't that bothered. Like, if Ollie wanted to watch one or go to the cinema to watch one, fine, you know, I'm here for it. But I just didn't really feel what everyone else was feeling. And then I watched WandaVision and I was like, this is brilliant. And I was like, I need to see more of these characters. So then I went back to the beginning and started with Iron Man and then watched like fucking everything. And I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Like, I can see what everyone's talking about.
He's a brilliant actor. I think he's quite an underrated actor, actually.
I would say that as well.
But anyway, yes, he is. He's brilliant in this.
Yeah, and he reminded me of Rick Mayall at times, like the way he uses his face and the way he expresses himself. So he's a really good physical actor. Like, he's so loud and intense and full of energy. And he had a lot of great funny moments in this as well. Obviously, he did like so much of the announcing for William at tournaments, which were naturally just so over the top because he's a writer as Chaucer. So often the language and the terms that he was using, like the people around him didn't really know what he was talking about.
So there's a line in it where he really just the crowd up, where he says something like, "My lords, ladies and gentlemen," and then he goes, "Anyone else not sitting on a cushion?" And the crowd go mental. But that's actually based on a John Lennon line.
Is it?
So I think there was a famous Beatles gig where they played to a load of rich people, and then there was a load of sort of locals. And John Lennon said something like, "People in the crowd go nuts. Those wearing jewelry sit at the back and just jangle it," or something like that. And the crowd went absolutely mental for it. And that's what he does in this. Like, it's like you say, it's that idea of he's playing to the common man. He's getting them all riled up for the joust. He's so good in this.
Yeah, and it just he creates so much of the atmosphere, and he's like, could anyone else have done it as good? I don't know, but Rick, definitely poor Rick. But yeah, just really, really brought it to life, was responsible for so much of the energy in this. I thought Heath was really good as well. But
let's talk about Heath Ledger.
Well, I was more impressed, I think, with his physical performance in this than his sort of line delivery and his characterization. So he's doing so much in this film. He's on horseback, he's jousting, he's sword fighting, he's running around all over the place. It looked absolutely exhausting. Like, he is never not moving. Like, it looked so intense.
Stunts,
and I was like,
there's a lot of stunts.
And I was like, a lot of time for that. You can see how hard he's working.
And he's so young. I think he's about 22, 23 in this.
He?
Yeah. I mean, so it's obviously, I think this was the film that really, obviously all the stuff that came after it and the story of Heath Ledger is one that's well documented, but this was the film that launched him into being quite a big star, because the poster is just his face.
It's him. And what's funny about that, because I saw it, obviously it's on the thumbnail, like the poster, I think, totally betrays
it looks like
the film actually
Disney
is.
Channel shit, doesn't it?
Or something really serious, like, because he's so brooding and you know, and obviously very handsome, and it's all red, like it's a really deep red in the background. And then sort of his image with this white text. So I was like, like, because I didn't know this was a comedy. I thought it was going to be like a serious romantic drama sort of thing.
Yeah, well,
so
I can
imagine
see why you
my
think that, yeah.
surprise.
I know, yeah.
Imagine, dun dun ch, dun dun ch.
But I mean, yeah, there are two standout performances in this. Paul Bettany's one, but I actually think Heath Ledger's the other, because we've done Ned Kelly before, which is obviously a Heath Ledger film, which is like a lesser known one. It's really serious, really quite a dark
Doing a lot
film.
of these period pieces, wasn't
But
he?
yeah, but then in this, he is headlining a blockbuster, and I just think he's charming as fuck as well.
He's pretty good.
He's so charming. He's so likable. William as a character is so likable, and like you say, the other supporting cast, you got Alan Tudyk and Mark Addy.
So
good as well.
Here's a question. So Alan Tudyk, right? What accent was he meant to be doing?
Oh yeah, I know.
Because it felt a bit Cockney sometimes, but then other times it was like sort of moving in and out of
and then you got
accents.
Mark Addy. Mark Addy next to him is just the most Yorkshire man
Yorkshire.
whoever did Yorkshire in the world. And but yeah, because I do think the cast overall in this are really great. I know we touched on Paul Bettany and Heath Ledger, but none of them I don't think were massive stars at the time. I think there was no one in this who was like the break, the massive star. Do you know what I mean? They were all fairly unknown or known for the odd thing. So I think that really works in the film's favour as well. It's not bogged down by the weight of like a big massive star of the time. But what else? What else did you like about it?
So obviously we've already touched on the script, but I was surprised by how funny it was and the kind of types of comedy that you're getting in there, because there was some really like scathing like comments and stuff from some of the characters to others, and I thought they were all just really entertaining. And I like how it's designed and constructed like a sports film, like you said, and it follows the sports film narrative, including like the killer pumped up soundtrack. You've got the scrappy underdog who dreams of more for himself. He goes from zero to hero just like that, and then you've got the disequilibrium when he faces the threat of being arrested for impersonating the Lord, and then he's got the will they won't they with the love interest, but then his nemesis also wants the girl, and it felt like such a good way to tell that story. And I think using that as the sort of framing and as the kind of skeleton of it, I think it was the best. They probably did the best job that they could have done, I think. I think that was just the best way to do it.
I think so. Like you say, it is that sports film narrative that we've already touched on. I don't think you can understate how important that structure and the way that they apply that modernism to this really lifts the film. Because, like you say, in the hands of someone else, this could have been a really box standard, boring film, or it could have been more serious, or it could have been not funny enough, or trying to be too funny, so therefore falling on its arse.
Trying too hard.
And like you say, you've even got your traditional things like hero hitting rock bottom and then deciding to get back up, there's even your proper quintessential cliched character explains the rules.
Right,
so in every sport, what we've got here is you've got to get this from this end without this happening, and then to do this you score a point, and this is how you win. But it works. I think that works quite a lot. I think it's great, and I'm made up you enjoyed it.
We'll move on now then to talking about anything that we didn't like about the film or anything that we would change. And I feel like there are going to be a couple of things, but I don't think there's going to be anything too destructive or too offensive. Go on, Josh. You start us off. What do you got? What's on your list?
Like you say, there's not going to be loads. There's two sort of issues with this film. First one is that the female lead, Shannon Sossaman's character, Jocelyn, doesn't have loads to do. So in the film, she's the prize. She is the prize. Her hand in marriage, because obviously it's medieval times, and that's what happened. People's girls' dads sold them, basically gave them away as part of dowries and marriages and all that sort of bollocks. Better times, I think, Alice. Obviously,
the past.
But in it, her character sort of makes a big point about, I don't want to just be the prize, and I'm my own person and all that, except the film, other than having her say that, doesn't give her any personality traits.
No, yeah.
So she doesn't want to be the prize, is the prize in the plot, but then sort of is kind of still the prize, because she just stands there looking pretty. And she's got some brilliant costumes and all that, and she looks fantastic and all that, but yeah, so And then because she doesn't have much to do, the actor Shannon Sossamon doesn't have much to do, and she does. She seems a little wooden in places, and a little bit
Yeah.
because she is American as well. Not the greatest English accent, let's be honest.
Really
not
not.
the,
No,
not the
really
best.
not, sadly.
And then the other issue is, I will say, it's a little long and repetitive in places.
It's a little bit long. It is a little bit long.
There's some
Chop 20 minutes off
Yeah,
that,
you
I
could definitely
reckon.
get 15-20 minutes out of this just by cutting some of the repetitive jousting sequences. And there are...
There's a lot of fucking jousting.
Yeah, and so because of that, it becomes a little bit repetitive, and I think because of that, the pacing suffers a little bit, and you dip in and out.
Okay,
Definitely dips sort of, I'd say, like about an hour and a half in, something like that, and then picks back up again for the last half an hour. But it's over 2 hours. It's 2 hours 20 or 2 hours 15, something like that. And it's not, it's not a massive issue, but it is a bit long. And I do think there's an issue with Jocelyn as a character. But other than that, there's not loads. It's a bit weird that he shouts his own name when he's jousted at the end. He just screams William, and it doesn't make any sense. But
funny though.
But anyway, what did you not like? What didn't you like about it, Josh?
So yeah, let's just do that all the time. I love that every time you walk into a room. So interestingly, again, like your points sort of inform and enhance my points a little bit. So one of them was that I just didn't feel anything for Jocelyn, for Shannon Sossamon, and I was like, why is this? Like, is it her? Is it the actor? Is it what? But like you say, I think she is underdeveloped. Her script isn't the strongest, and there's just not a whole lot going on there. The other thing that is a bit odd as well is, so her hair and her costume really stand out. Like, they're so much more modern than anyone else that's around her, which, yes, it looked fantastic, but it was a little bit strange and a little bit like confusing. So then I was just thinking about that. There's one where she's watching one of the tournaments, and she's wearing like this white sort of wickery hat thing and then a white dress. And Ollie was like, she looks like she's at Wimbledon.
Yeah,
watching the tennis.
There are bits where she's basically got modern costume on.
Yeah, which I know is obviously a choice.
Yeah,
and I get that, but it didn't. It felt too obvious,
sort of
and
jarred
like it
a little
stood out
bit.
too much.
I think
yeah.
the thinking, as far from what I can tell, and obviously we'll never know because we don't know the filmmakers, but
Get in touch,
is
lads.
that that they've gone. So she is this beautiful leading female character that she's desired by all the knights. They all want to be with her. She is the prize, and she's pulling away from that and wants to be her own person. But in order to demonstrate how beautiful she is, she has to stand out from all the other characters, particularly all the other female characters. Because if you look at the only other the prominent female character, which is the blacksmith Kate, she is very much done down, isn't she? So she's obviously
working.
Yeah, she's working. She's meant to be poor. She's always got her hair up. She's doesn't seem to be wearing loads of makeup, because obviously why would you? It is from 1,000 years ago. So as far as I know, makeup wasn't a massive thing, but I'm not an expert. So I think,
shocking.
Yeah, that's obviously the thinking, isn't it? That she should stand out, but they almost go too far with it, don't they?
Yeah, and it sort of it just, if you start asking questions that aren't ever answered, that's a bit of a flaw in the film, I think. And I was asking questions about her appearance that were never answered. I thought William was a bit of a moody brat at times, and so sometimes he wasn't that
when he's screaming his own name.
He was a little bit. I thought that was quite funny, but like sometimes he could sort of get a little bit petulant, I think, and he sort of teeters the edge from being passionate and obviously desperate to succeed into then just being kind of annoying and a bit bratty. Like the way he speaks to is it Kate that you said is the blacksmith's name? Yeah, the way that he speaks to her sometimes is just like a bit spoiled and just a little bit annoying, but on the most part, very likable, and that's fine.
The people, he pushes the people around him a lot, doesn't he? And they've got no reason to actually help him other than being his friend.
They need that dollar. They need the dollars. Why? They need him to get the money. I think Mark Addy's character says, doesn't he? It's like, I could afford to travel here and there and everywhere 300 times over, or whatever he says, with all the cash he's got. So, they're in it for the money, and that's fine. So I have mentioned this previously when we did Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and I realised that I am just very particularly sensitive when it comes to animals, but a lot of the horses in this did not look like they were having a good time, and it just makes me sad. And the thing is, obviously, you wouldn't be able to tell this story without horses, because a lot of it is on horseback and all about jousting. But it's just when they do the wide-eyed thing and they're trying to pull away from their handler and stuff, like, oh, it just makes me feel a little bit sad. And then just finally, so ultimately, sort of on the whole, it is very by the numbers in terms of character development and story progression. So everything happens as you would predict it to happen, staying true to that sports film narrative. So I didn't think there were any surprises. There was no plot twists or anything. So in that regard, I would say that it is a bit basic, but it is still thoroughly enjoyable despite that.
I completely can see what you mean there. I think what I would say to that would be that it is very formulaic, but it does hit all those beats, but it just hits them so well.
So we'll move on now then to talking about the critical reception, which I haven't seen, but
Go on.
say you think this is underrated.
Scream your own name at me and tell me the critical reception.
Alice! You've been very complimentary about this film, so I reckon you're probably thinking it gets about a 7.5, maybe up to the high 7s. So if that's the case and you think it's underrated, I don't think it did that bad.
No?
I'm gonna say that it got a middle 6, and I'll say a 6.6. I'd probably give it a high 6. Maybe
6?
just about, maybe about touching the 7, because it was very entertaining. And I think, like you say, this is definitely one that I would show my potential future children. I do think it's appropriate, but still edgy enough to kind of be enjoyable and for them to enjoy it.
There's stuff in there for them to enjoy. Would you watch it again?
Yeah, I reckon I would.
Yeah,
I reckon I would. Christmas time, perfect. Let's do
Nights
it.
and that, nights and jousting and that. It's very Christmassy, even though it's set probably maybe.
It is a little bit, isn't it? It's funny that. Go on. I'm going to say.
Okay.
What did I say? 6.6, 66.
So a middling 6, you reckon? So at the time of recording, IMDb, it scores 6.9, so 69.
Ooh.
The audience on Rotten Tomatoes, and I'd say this tells the story for me. This is more in line with what I would say. Give it 79%.
Okay.
So a high 7. And the critics, and this was the bit that made me pick it, I think, give it 59%, which I think is too low. It averages out. Low. It averages out as 69%. Now, for me,
the sexy number for a sexy film.
Oh, it's that time of year again, except it's not. That's Valentine's Day. What am I talking about? So 69% oi. I think. Look, there are issues with it. We've touched on that, but I think that the positives and the feel-good factor and the fact that it's a sort of an original concept as well amplify this film to be in. I would give it. I think this is a solid 8 out of 10 film.
8, really? Wow.
Yeah. That's what I would say. So, what you get?
You think this is better than Superman 2?
Oh, this is better than Superman 2. This is better than Superman 2.
I can't have that.
Last film of 2022. How are we going out? Is it underrated or do you disagree?
Well, I think for me that is a sort of appropriately rated, but it was so much fun and enjoyable, and it is one that I would recommend. So I am definitely happy to take the knee on this and let it slide on into the underrated, because I don't feel like, I think it's appropriately rated, but I'm not like gonna die on that hill.
Well,
so if you're telling me you think it's underrated, I totally buy that, because I can see it.
59 from the
59
critics.
Is low. 59 is high.
That's usually the deciding factor, isn't it? Is what the critics give it, because those audiences are not too dissimilar. But that 59 is really dragging that down, and I think that's why it's probably critically underrated. So do you agree? Do we go out in 2022 agree with it?
If you're gonna phrase it like that, then it is underrated. There we go. A Knight's Tale, underrated.
So there we go, another one in the underrated vault. I think you should check out A Knight's Tale at this time of year. I think it's a great film for the family. Sort of 8 and above, I would say. So that is the last film of 2022. Now, Alice, you
There
took
we
us into
go.
2022 with The Beach.
I did, with
Which
The
seems like at
Beach.
least 70 years ago, but here we
Oh
are.
my God, that's crazy, isn't
What are we
it?
starting 2023 with?
Well, it's something a little bit different from The Beach, but I'm sort of following your line
The
of
sea.
thinking here. Yeah, because you've done really. I think you've picked really good films this time of year, the past couple of years now. So it's sort of in keeping with that. You want something that's going to warm you up a bit. You know,
Oh,
it's dark, it's cold, it's miserable.
little cuddle
So
of a film.
the next, yeah, exactly. That is exactly what this is, I reckon. So for next week, we are going to be watching The Pirates in an Adventure with Scientists.
Oh, as in the Aardman one.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay, interesting
Is it
film.
it is yeah, I think it's Aardman. It's at least in the style of,
I think it
if
is
it's not
Aardman. It's like
Aardman, I
Flushed
think it's
Away, isn't
okay,
it? And
good.
Chicken Run.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
I think it is. I think it is Aardman. But yeah, that's an interesting film to start 2023 off
Mm.
with. So there we go. Well, Alice, that's us for the year.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
I know, another year done. So I suppose
It's done.
all that remains to be said is thank you very much for sticking with us this year. We hope to see you next year. We hope many more people will join us next year as well. That'd be lovely. And yeah, thank you so much for your support. We really do appreciate it. And we topped our 100th episode, didn't we, this
Oh my
year?
gosh, yeah,
So
so many
it's been a big year.
milestones.
So let's see what 2023 has got in store for us.
Wow, gosh,
I'm not gonna
2023, that's blowing my
I'm not
mind.
going to do all the usual spiel. You know where we are. We're on social
You know where
media.
we are, guys.
We're on the telly. You know when that is. Thank you very much for sticking with us this year. And of course, Happy New Year. It's goodbye from me. Cheerio.
Happy New Year. Look after yourselves. Don't get too pissed.